going to introduce our first speaker, which is Professor Harald Haas. He holds the chair for mobile communications at the University of Edinburgh, and he's published over 270 conference and journal papers to date. He works collaboratively with international project and industry partners, and is a member of several international expert working groups on future 5G mobile technology. I've realised you can't really see Harald at all, can you? Do you want to come here while I'm talking about you?
Yes.
So
Standing in the dark, it's about light. It's about light.
This is the one I'm talking about.
Yes.
His academic path began at the University of Applied Sciences in Nuremberg, where he was awarded his first engineering degree in '97. Following a brief period in industry, he then joined the University of Edinburgh in '99 as a research associate and was awarded his PhD in 2001. He continued his research as an associate professor at the Jacobs University Bremen before returning to the University of Edinburgh in 2007 to both lecture and develop his research group, which now includes 15 postdoctoral and postgraduate researchers. Harald was recently selected as the RISE, the RISE leader by the Engineering and Physical Science Research Council, which recognises 10 inspirational scientists and engineers who have led innovation. And we're going to be hearing a lot about innovation tonight. His most significant work to date has been in the field of Li-Fi, which is the focus of his talk this evening. And in his 2011 TED presentation, Harald demonstrated that it's possible to turn LED light bulbs into broadband wireless transmission systems, which sounds extraordinary. He's originated the term Li-Fi and pioneered the technology, and Li-Fi was listed among the 50 best inventions in Time magazine 2011. He holds 26 patents and has 20 pending patent applications. He's co-founder and chief scientific officer of the university spin-out company pureLiFi Limited, and is also leading the Toucan Lab, the Towards Ultimate Convergence of All Networks at the College of Science and Engineering, which is a partner in a new £12 million 5-year project led by the University of Bristol and funded by the EPSRC and a consortium of industry partners. So would you join me in welcoming Professor Harald Haas?
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to talk about how light can change the world. In fact, light has already changed the world because we are here, humans are here. Light has created life, and as such, it's an important principle, I would say. I want to talk first about how light can be connected to another revolution that we have seen, all of you have experienced. It's the revolution of mobile communications. So this is a smartphone. It is a little computer that you use in your everyday lives. Interestingly, this little device is now exceeding the number of humans on this planet. So we have, for the first time, more mobile devices than we have people on the planet. And in fact, we have about 7.3 billion mobile devices spread around the globe. And that is a huge success. But what does it mean? It means that it's forecast by 2018, so 4 years from now, we transmit about 1.8 million years of high-definition video through our mobile networks. And that's a really, really big number, which means that we require a lot of resources, so transmission resources, to achieve that. But what we also have is by 2020, what people forecast is that not only humans communicate via mobile communications using their phone, but also machines. Machines communicate with each other. We have heard about the Google car, autonomous car. So things become autonomous. So if you then could imagine all the things around you, we could have, and this is what people forecast, by 2020, about 1,000 wirelessly connected devices with you and around you. And that's another factor which basically contributes to an explosion of a technology that is based on wireless communications. As a result, as a consequence of that, what we are facing is that the radio frequency spectrum is running out of steam. We simply don't have enough. And the consequence of that is that we have so many devices, so many what we call radio base station, radio masts, is that the energy consumption of our current mobile communications networks is about equivalent to the entire air traffic, including passengers, freight, military, all entire air traffic per year. This is about the same equivalent energy that is needed to run our mobile communication networks. And what is contributing to that is this. These are the essential building blocks of a mobile communication systems, and you may recognize the seat in the background. These are radio base stations with an antenna on the top, and you see at the bottom, you see this little box drives the antenna here, and that big container here, can you guess what it is? It's a diesel generator. And many of these radio base stations on Great Lockhart Hill are still diesel powered, and the radio base stations also have often in hot countries air conditioning, and that means the energy consumption that goes out here is only a fraction of the energy you will put into that base station. That's okay if you have one, but what is if you go through all the mobile communications generations? So you have heard about the second generation GSM, where the radio base station could serve about 35 kilometers in sort of distance. But the second generation, or the third generation, which is also often called UMTS, the radius has already been reduced to about 5 kilometers in order to serve more users, more mobiles. So this increase of number of users is sort of mirrored into that. And the fourth generation, in the fourth generation, the cell radius is about 200 meters. That means every 200 meters on your streets, you have a radio cellular mast. And now, can you imagine what happens when people now want to progress this further into the fifth generation? I couldn't plot the number of base stations you would require, but the cell radius for a 5G future cell is in the region of 20 meters. So you would really plaster your city, your infrastructure, and your highlands full with radio cellular masts. And that's one of the major contributors in mobile communications to the increase of data rates that we see. It's not that there's new technology out there, the way we use the radio spectrum, it's simply by adding more of these. So we don't want to do that. So the hypothesis is, or the proposition put forward is, let's have this, it's okay, we need it, but what about these? These are street lights, a street light taken from the campus of King's buildings in front of Alexander Graham Bell building, the person I will introduce in a minute. These are street lights made of or powered by LEDs, light-emitting diodes. You can't see it, but this is an LED. And we have many of them, and they are much more energy efficient than the traditional street lights, and that's why we have them. But the question is, we have this infrastructure there. Can we turn that light into an equivalent of a radio cellular mast? So let light communicate, let lights talk. You would think it's futuristic, one of these wild scientists with their wild visions. And I can tell you, it's here in Edinburgh, where the man was born, who had that idea long before me. It's the man after which the building I'm sitting, or I have my office in, the Alexander Graham Bell building, is this man, Alexander Graham Bell. We all know him for an invention which has changed our life and contributed to the mobile communication revolutions for the telephone. But the interesting thing is that not many people know is that he has invented something else before the telephone, and it was the so-called photophone. So Alexander Graham Bell invented the photophone. So what did he do? He used a microphone that is sort of had a microphone here, and that microphone, the voice, changed the angle of a mirror in here. So he had vibrating mirror in his transmitter device. He took sunlight via a mirror, a concentrator, he focused the sunlight, and then the speech changed the the angle of the mirror, so the mirror vibrated according to the speech, and he transmitted that sort of light whose intensity changed, obviously, because the mirrors were vibrating. And then he had 200 meters away, he had a receiver, which was a selenium cell with a parabolic mirror, and that selenium cell recovered the changes of the intensity of the reflected sunlight back into speech. So he had another person 200 meters away who could then listen to what the man said at the microphone there. That's the photophone. And that is before he invented the telephone, 8080. And he thought, the greatest invention I have ever made, greater than a telephone. That's what his original quote is. So using light for data communication is not new, sadly, but it took a long 130 more years to make it sort of bring it into our world. And that time, people basically transmitted primarily from one end to another end voice. But with our modern world, we have data communication. So we are not transmitting these analog signals, these sort of voice and speech signals. We are transmitting and converting every piece of information in a binary data stream. So if you take your book, for example, with a lot of your exam paper, whatever, and something written is, it was a bright, cold day in April, maybe a cold, bright, rainy day in April here. These are letters that each of these letters is represented by a number, and these numbers, these binary, digital numbers are then converted into a binary bit stream in ones and zero. So 73 is sort of encoded in that red piece of string of zeros and ones, which represent that particular letter I. So every letter in a text is sort of converted into a string of zeros and ones. The same happens with voice, with music. So music is sort of a signal that varies in time. So we see here, so what we do with our modern communications technology, we sample the voice speech signal every few seconds and then convert the value that we sample into a binary number, into a digital number, and we convert that digital number into a binary sequence. And we could do the same with images. We take an image, look closer. Every image is composed of many pixels, and every pixel is sort of represented by intensity, color, and we can sort of convert color and intensity into numbers, and these numbers then back into binary numbers, which are much longer. But again, every number has a unique representation in the digital domain, in the binary domain. And the same is if we have a sequence of images with a film, we can do the same and transmit that film with binary numbers, zeros and ones. So everything, all information we have, written, voice, pictures, and so on, is converted into the same little thing, which is a sequence of ones and zeros. Everything is represented by that principle. So that's the way we digitize our world, our information. And that is the way why we do that is because now we can transmit these zeros and ones very easily. So if you imagine this is your sequence of ones and zeros, we can say if you take a switch, you turn on the switch, it's 1, you turn it off, it's 0. You can have voltage on a piece of wire where we have the state when there is voltage on, this is 1, and voltage is off, you have 0. Or in the case of an LED, like the one from my bike that I need tonight, we turn it on and off, so 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. And if you do that very fast, we can transmit data. So that's the basic principle in our modern world. We have used very successfully the electromagnetic spectrum frequencies. So frequencies are waves from 1 and 0, so circling through the respective domain. And the way we have primarily transmitted information is using the radio waves, so the radio waves and the microwaves. And the radio waves and the microwaves are a particular part of the entire electromagnetic spectrum. And we've basically they have very nice and good properties why they are used in radio communications, cellular communications, as well as in sort of wired communication. So how does it work? So we have this radio spectrum, which is now split up into blocks of between 3 kilohertz and 300 kilohertz. Hertz is a measure of the frequency, it's a number of cycles per second that is represented by that respective frequency domain. And we know that if you look into the allocation of that spectrum, you know radio 1, radio 4, each radio station has a particular frequency, 95.8 megahertz, that you tune to in order to listen to radio 1 and radio 4. Same is with TV. You have the TV spectrum, the terrestrial TV spectrum, in a certain range within this radio spectrum. And then you have the satellite, shown by this white bar. This is all good. There's lots of spectrum when you look at these few examples. But if you look at the real world, then this is what we have. The spectrum is fully occupied. The radio spectrum is fully occupied from 0 hertz to the maximum of 300 gigahertz. That is used by people with mobile phones, by people who run military apparatus, is used by lots of people, astrophysics, people in astrophysics, and so on. And what it means is that if you want to reallocate new spectrum, for example, for mobile communication, because you run out of spectrum, you would need to ask someone else to release his or her spectrum. And that is often very, very problematic and also very expensive. For example, you may have heard that an auction for 3G spectrum in Europe meant that operators, the people who run mobile communication systems, had to give 50 billion euro to get a little tiny chunk of the spectrum to run mobile communication systems. So it's a very expensive, a very scarce resource. So now I've shown you the electromagnetic spectrum, and you've seen it's only the radio spectrum is only one little part of it. We have more there. We have the infrared, and we also have the visible light spectrum there. In that little corner here, we have the visible light spectrum, and it appears on that particular scale, which is a logarithmic scale, that the visible light spectrum is very tiny. But you need to realize that the scale here is logarithmic. So you have 1, 10, 100. So from every step means a multiplication by 10. So if you imagine this is between 10 to the power of 0 and 1, this is a bucket, and you can fill in 10 apples. And if you take the from 10 to 100, you can fill in 90 apples. So every time you get more into that little same space, and it looks like, it appears as if sort of the spectrum in that region is really squashed. If you would show that in the real physical, real world domain, what it would happen is that, first of all, our entire radio spectrum that we see here, that I've shown is fully occupied, would move into the radio waves, obviously. And then if we then show the same spectrum in a linear domain, what would happen is the actual radio spectrum is a tiny fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum, and the visible light spectrum, the thing that appears to be very small, effectively is very large. In fact, it's 10,000 times larger than the entire radio spectrum. So we have a tremendous resource in the electromagnetic region to perhaps use for communication purposes. And Alexander Graham Bell has shown to us that it is possible to use that light for data communication. So why haven't we used it then? It is another gentleman who's a link to Edinburgh, Mr. Edison and Mr. Swann, who developed this one, the incandescent light bulb. This is primarily the device we have used and have been using in our homes to illuminate our spaces. It's basically a glass bulb which is evacuated, and we have a little filament in there and a little string of wire that we heat up. We heat up, and then it sort of glows, and it glows white, and we get white light. The efficiency, the energy efficiency of that is about 2%. So 98% of the energy you pump into that light source, into the incandescent light bulb source, is wasted into heat. So it's principally a heater with a side effect of bringing in light. So what is if we use that for data communication? So I show you now in a second a little video what happens when you switch on that light bulb. It is sort of slowed down by a factor of 40. You see the light bulb? It's coming up. You see it pulsing. This is because our main power supply is AC, is sort of current, voltage that changes from positive to negative 50 times per second. And that pulsation is sort of the AC current that comes out of our sockets. And you have seen that it's really hard to turn this incandescent light bulb on and off because it's so slow. It needs to heat up, it needs time to heat up, it needs time to cool down. And therefore we can't use it for very high-speed data communication where we would need to switch things on and off very quickly. So this old technology is not usable for the way we want to use light. But there's another, we need another device, an electronic device, namely an LED. And I hold it up here. This is a light-emitting diode, which is a semiconductor. So what is a semiconductor? So first of all, I show that's now magnified. You see a little glass, a body of glass, which is nothing else than a lens. The really important thing happens in the middle here. You see this cup, which is a bit of a parabolic mirror. And inside that mirror are two semiconductor materials, one that is sort of so-called P-type. This is material that has depleted electrons, and then you have an N-type, which is a material that has too many electrons, and electrons are part of our atoms. In the middle is a neutral region where sort of the number of electrons are just sufficient for that particular atom. So it's a bit like, if you compare it, like here's an area where people with lots of money live. Here's an area where people with the need of money live. And in between you have a neutral region where people are happy. So there's no money coming from the orange to the blue. Then you put in electric force, you put in electrons, you try to shift in electrons, so you make that area smaller, and what happens then is that an electron recombines with a so-called hole. So basically what it means is somebody from the rich region gives a pound to one in the region where people need money. So every time that happens, a recombination of 1 pound to the area of people with demand, then somebody shouts hooray, and hooray means a photon is emitted. That's the basic sort of principle how it works. And every time such an electron meets a hole in the other area, we get these photons. And you notice now that we don't need any wires. We don't need to heat up anything. It's basically light is emitted by electrons finding their place in the atom in the other region. And therefore, LED lights are first of all, much more energy efficient. But because of that principle, we can also turn them on very, very quickly. And that allows us then to communicate and use them as communication devices. Why have we not used then LEDs in our homes? Because so far we had only LEDs that are emitting red light. And who wants to have red light in his bedroom? Only if you process your photographic film. We had green light, but do you want to live in a green lit living room? No. There's something missing. And something missing came from the successor of Mr. Higgs, Professor Higgs, I'm sorry, who got a Nobel Prize in Physics, as you know, last year for the Higgs boson. But these guys have got the Nobel Prize for Physics this year. They got this medal, or will get this medal, for the invention of the blue LED. So they developed a light-emitting diode that emits blue light. So why is that important? Now we have red, we have green, and we have blue, and that was 93. And if you mix the three colors, we get white. So we have then all the building blocks to generate white light like this. So in order to show how it works, so take the base colors, red, green, and blue, and now mix them up. So we mix them. In the middle, there's then a region where you see white light, and obviously green and red makes yellow, red and blue magenta. Now you put them together. What happens? We have white light generated from red, green, blue. In fact, now we have the means to represent every possible color with the three base colors. So take a picture of Maxwell and zoom into that picture. So we see, again, the image, but if we zoom closer, and closer, and closer, and we see, and closer, we see three colors, red, green, blue. And by the intensity of each of these base colors, we then determine first of all, how bright it is, what color it is, so we can really represent all images, everything in these baseline colors. So that is very important. So we have created that white LED light, which is important. It's an important step for, first of all, because of the energy efficiency, and these places, these LEDs find their place in the lighting domain. That's why they were developed. But here's an example of a domestic LED-based light bulb with many individual elements within that LED which make that light then very bright, because a single LED, these are two LEDs, you see, they are not bright enough to illuminate a room, but many of them will be able to do that. So we have prepared a little experiment here by, let me go in here. So you see this flashing, right? So if I turn that on, do you see that flashing as well? Is that flashing? It is. And we can make it visible because of the way the eye works, by moving it. So let's move this thing around and see what happens. Yes, thank you. So closer and closer. So because of the movement, so the LEDs are turned on about every millisecond, 1/1000th of a second. But because they move, and the particular way the eye works, you then can send messages via the LEDs. But we want to turn them on not only in every 1/1000th step of a second. We want to turn on them, switch them on and off much faster. So 1 billion times per second, not 1,000 times per second. And we have done this. And the way we do it is we take, again, the system we want to develop is, what we like to do is we want to send a video that you see here through an LED that is flashing on and off, sending these ones and zeros, and then we have a receiver there receiving a video at very high data rates, at very high speed. So a lot of ones and zeros we want to transmit per second. And for that, we need that to happen very quickly. So this is where I came in 10 years, and I developed modulation, so encoding techniques to enable a lot of ones and zeros to be transmitted per second. And I would like to demonstrate to you now a system that I've developed inside that company, pureLiFi, where we have taken here, what you see here is a light fixture. It's purposefully not pointed into your eyes, it's pointed against that white wall. This is standard, and then you see a little box here with a green light. This box drives that LED, so it provides power for the light fixture, but it is also connected to that laptop here, and that laptop streams a video. You can stream high definition video if you want, to that box, and that box converts the signal, as I've shown you here in the illustration, back into ones and zeros at very, very high speed so that you can't recognize it with your eyes. Even if you were moving very fast, it would be too fast. So we send that then to that box here, where you see a red flashing light, and that box takes the signal, takes the light that's been reflected from that wall, gets it in and decodes it back into a binary streams of ones and zeros. And the computer makes then sense out of these ones and zeros and displays back what is being transmitted there. So I hope we'll see that working now. So what I will do is, apologies for the people in the front row, I will turn it on and need to do this and this. This video is now being transmitted from that off-the-shelf light fixture, turning the LEDs on and off extremely quickly. Do you see a flicker? So, do you want me to stop the video? So, put my hand, it's not pointing, the light is not pointing into the receiver. Put my hand here, does it stop? You see. But if I do this, if I be brutal, like an academic is, the video is perfect. So it takes a while because it has put in a data stream into the you see the flashing light here. That basically means that there's no data coming back up it again. So the video is stopped, yeah, but the voice is coming. So if I come back up again, so the video comes up again. So sorry, usually the voice will stop as well, but the way it is set up here hasn't interrupted the sound. But the image really would stop. How it works. Coming up again. And it's very important to show that we are not pointing that into that receiver. So it even works if you had that receiver in areas where there's hardly any light. So the receiver here, the eye that is integrated here, is very sensitive. So it would also work if that would be under the table also. So that is something that you can also view in the foyer, where we demonstrate that you can plug any LED light source into that box here. And what we have shown outside is we have taken a torch, an LED torch, and transmit a video from an LED torch. This is something you can see outside in the foyer. So let's try again. Yeah, picture stops, video, the sound sometimes stops. So. Right. So turn it off. So we can turn ordinary off-the-shelf light fixtures in high-speed communication devices. And that's what we're selling. So, nice technology, but what can you do with it? I will start with the applications by looking at street lights I've already alluded to. We have thousands of street lights. And if you remember a cellular communication system where we have so many radio base stations, we can now use street furniture, like street lamps, to turn street lamps into communication, so radio cell or light communication masts. And the important thing is that we have developed algorithms so that we can turn the lights down, that it would appear off, but it would still be able to communicate. So we can even work during daytime, let the lights work during daytime. And then if you imagine cars, modern cars have LED headlights, they have LED backlights, the traffic lights are made of LEDs. What we can do now is intelligent transport systems, where cars can communicate with each other. If a car sees an accident, the backlight can send messages back to the car behind, and so you can relay information to prevent accidents, or anti-collision systems. The traffic lights can reroute local traffic depending on the congestion on the streets. What we can also do is we can turn underwater vehicles, like remote operated vehicles underwater, into devices that use their lights to basically take photos from the seabeds, but take the lights as well to transmit the images back to the surface or to another vehicle. Scuba divers can use their torch, you have a torch outside, to communicate underwater, which is really hard to do because, again, radio doesn't work underwater. So we can enhance the security on underwater missions. And then one of my favorites is this status light of an appliance at home. This symbolizes any appliance at home, for example, a toaster, a fridge, an oven, a microwave. And these devices have LED lights. Now you can link that LED light to the light fixture in your home, and now suddenly what you have done is you have connected your devices to the internet. You can monitor the energy consumption, you can make the devices smart, that it's used when it costs least amount of energy, and have the devices to communicate with each other. So the Internet of Things would be possible with these simple status lights integrated. And then another favorite is jewelry, integrated with a little so-called micro LED. Again, looks futuristic and many people may not like it, but what it can do is, if that light would measure the blood pressure, blood sugar level, temperature, it can transmit data 24 hours, 7 days to the light fixtures around, and also monitor if people are standing or people are falling down. So you can monitor elderly, you can monitor people that sort of need that continuous monitoring, could release them earlier from hospitals, so saving the NHS billions of dollars if you have this monitoring mechanism. So it's for the healthcare. Another important application is because lights are very local. You see that light in that corner, light in that corner. Once you pass the light, you will know that you are exactly under that particular light fixture in a room, in an office environment, and then you could relate it to the position and can do indoor positioning, find out where you are, so indoor GPS. Then we have shopping windows where we have lights that illuminate the things that we want to sell. But these lights can also provide coupons, information about what else is in the store, what is on offer, and sort of blend high street shopping and online shopping in order to make benefits from both worlds. And another futuristic example, people also talk about clothes to be getting smarter. And one way of doing is combine fashion with smartness and letting these LEDs talk to the internet. Not yet sure what application it is, but at least it's possible. And another example is museums. You have objects that you illuminate with your lights, and now the lights can also provide information about the objects that are in these cabinets, or what are exhibited there. So it's a new way of providing information wirelessly. And another example is intrinsically safe environments like Grangemouth, petrochemical plants, oil platforms, petrol stations, where the antenna of a telephone can create sparks and explosions, and that is therefore it's not possible to use antennas and radio, but it is possible to use lights in these environments to make these environments safer. And then a classic example is an aircraft cabin. So usually we have to switch off the mobile phones, but there are hundreds of headlights, and these headlights can provide information can be the gateway to the internet, so you can surf the internet via these lights. And we've done some measurements here with an aircraft manufacturer and have calculated as part of our research where the light is and how much light we get at what location, so to optimize the system. So this is a sort of a snapshot of possible applications, by far not everything. But it's a few important things that we should remember when we talk about light communication. And the questions I'm asked many times, or very often when I give these lectures, is, do the lights flicker? But I think I've demonstrated to you that the LEDs are turned on so quickly that the human eye wouldn't be able to recognize any flicker. And the other point is that people say the lights have to be on to communicate, but this is not the case. We can turn the lights down and dim them down so that it would appear off, but it would still be able to communicate. So during daytime. The question also is asked, what about sunlight, ambient light? Will that impact the properties and the possibilities? And it's clearly not the case. Sunlight is a constant light. It doesn't change in time, so it can be extracted, can be filtered out, so it doesn't have any impact. And uses the Li-Fi is a means to use power very efficiently, so you can create more energy efficient wireless connectivity. And what is very important is that it is not a line of sight technology, and this is what I've demonstrated to you here. It works off reflected objects. So, where are we heading? Where is the industry heading? We have an incandescent light bulb. It's banned in many countries for good reasons. And then we see news like Philips selling off its lighting business. The LED light bulb is creating a landslide shift in the industry. And the important thing is here, after 123 years, Philips is selling off its lighting business. Doesn't see any core value anymore. Why is that? One of the reasons is, this is an LED light bulb I've received as a gift recently from that company. And if you look closer, what it says is 20 years. The asterisk, I don't know, maybe you shouldn't use it. Or it's 20 years that people claim that an LED light bulb will last. So how often do you usually replace your car? Perhaps more often than 20 years. So once you've installed your lighting, you're done. No new light bulb. And that means that these companies like Philips can't sell these incandescent light bulbs in the same frequencies as before, so that business model ceases to exist. And the way to react to that is, like in the analog photography, where the photographic film was replaced by the digital camera, we have to develop new business models. And the way of doing it is to develop a new business model so that we enrich the light with additional services. And I've shown you one service that we can add to a light bulb, making it connect to the world. And this is a product you see here. It's called Li-First, and it allows bidirectional communication. But if you want to do real communication, you would need to have, like in Wi-Fi, you have one access point, but it can serve many users. So you need to make this device to connect to multiple users in a room. And this is what we call multi-user access. And also, you need to be networked, so when you move from under one light source to another light source, you should not lose your connection, and that's called handover. And that's a product we've just released. It's a fully networked Li-Fi modem, and that now can be installed with your light. So now your light fixture is illuminating the space, but it also has the same functionality that your Wi-Fi router. And we know from studies that every single wireless link that we install allows and enables 100 more applications. Now, the new business model is to take this light source, install it with this capability of wireless connectivity, and then let people develop new applications, new apps around your light sources at home. And then what happens is you will not replace your light bulb because it's not working anymore, because you want to have the newest version in your ceiling rather than it's not working. that's the way it will go. And this is an illustration of this multi-user access I've just explained. Now, this is how your boardroom will look in the future. You will have your light sources, and the light sources talk to your laptops, and the laptops talk to the light sources. And guess what? It adds another interesting feature that some people are really worried about is security. Often in company headquarters, people don't install Wi-Fi because you can decode it on the street. But look at this. Will light go through walls? No. It provides a contained space within which you can enjoy wireless connectivity, but outside that space, no one can intercept. So to illustrate that is, if you take your iPhone now, turn it on, and look how many Wi-Fi access points are around, you see a huge list of access points, and I guess many of you have tried all of them out, whether you can log in or not, and how to break it. Now, do the same here. Use your lights as transmitters, and then you try to find Wi-Fi access points of your neighbor. You won't be able to see any signal because the wall entirely blocks it. It's a means to do more secure wireless communications. And I told you at the beginning that the energy consumption is a big concern. So same energy consumption that the entire air traffic. Now, would it not be nice to use what we use as energy harvesting devices for sustainable development, use solar cells in connection with wireless and mobile communication, and use a solar cell as a detector that takes the light from the LED, converts it into energy in addition to the ambient light, but the light that comes from the LED light carries information and let the solar cell decode that information. So we've turned in our lab for the first time a solar cell into an energy harvesting device, which it is anyway, but also into a data receptor. And we've managed to take this off-the-shelf solar cell and receive 15 megabit from that solar cell, an unmodified solar cell. So basically we shine the light on the solar cell, get the energy, but also get data. So what the intention is, fully self-powered wireless connectivity, contributing to that relief of energy consumption in that information communications technology domain. So we transmit the ones and zeros to the solar cell, and the solar cell will detect it. Now, we talk about the rural divide, and you have a hut in the highlands where probably no one will give you money to dig up put in trenches here and put in fiber optic cable there, but you may get money from the councils to install a light source there, which could be a laser light, where the laser light beams information to the roof, where the roof provides the energy, and the solar cells there will also detect and decode the information transmitted from that solar sort of laser source, and then you have a fully connected world where also remote areas like this one can benefit from hundreds of megabit per second. And it doesn't really matter if that light source hits that solar cell or this solar cell. You don't need precise alignment as long as the light hits the solar cell, any of the solar cells. In traditional, what people call free space optical communications, you would have a little, you may have a little receiver here, which is a little device of the size of this box here, and you would need to align a laser beam exactly to that point, and little wind changes in the direction will then cause failures, but it won't be the case with such a deployment. And then if you go further, take solar cells and integrate them into smartphones, like here, where the display would harvest the energy that falls onto it, and at the same time that would act as a receiver. Now if you imagine the world of radio base stations everywhere, very crowded environment, and compare that to a scenario like here in a city where there's thousands and thousands of lights. And you have a ready-made infrastructure that you can use and create a fully connected wireless world using existing devices, but changing the energy inefficient incandescent light bulb into a LED light bulb and let the LED light bulb then communicate. So that brings me to my final comment. I've said at the beginning, light has created life on the planet, has created us. We have created Bell Labs, Google, Microsoft, Apple, IBM. Now, what is if we combine humans and light? So this is where, and that in Scotland. So let us combine humans and light and change the world by creating a new way of wireless connectivity within the University of Edinburgh's Li-Fi R&D Center, so the center that we have created here to provide novel technological solutions to change the world for the better. Thank you very much.
Several questions, actually. How do you deal with multiple transmitters with one receiver? How does it sort it out? Why don't the light signals interfere with each other? And secondly, can you modulate each of the three colors, each of the three bands separately? And how many other possible bands are there technically possible out with maybe the light spectrum?
3 questions for the price of 1.
So can I start with the last one, with the 3 colors? Because you made extremely good points, and I didn't want to go into deep technical details, but what we have done is, because we have these different colors, we can use the different colors, so red, green, blue, and modulate data on each of these colors, and then have filters and then other means to separate them at the receiver. And we have done this in the lab, and what we have done is we have achieved 15 gigabit per second over 2 meters by applying that mechanism. So indeed it is possible, and indeed this is a massive way of enhancing the data rate, because white light can not only be generated from red, green, blue, but you can use a large number of different colors to create white light. And that gives us many color channels to scale up the data rate. And we've done research, we've just submitted an invited paper where we've shown that in the future, indeed, you can achieve 100 gigabit per second from a light source. And the other question is about the receivers. If you have multiple light sources, obviously, yes, you would generate interference. But the way a receiver is constructed is you have multiple photodetectors inside, right? Like you can imagine this like an insect facet eye. And every receiver component, which is a very tiny element, will then only look into a certain direction in the hemisphere. And now if you get interference from one direction, you can shut off receivers that receive interference only. You can activate those receivers that look into the direction of the light that sends you data. So we have developed also in the center various techniques and algorithms so that we can deal with this interference in a fully networked environment. And what was the third question?
Different colors beyond the visible spectrum.
Yes, we can. That, I should have mentioned that. That box here has 2 white spots there. And I mentioned to you it's a bidirectional communication link. I've shown you only one direction from the light to that box and then the video, but these LEDs are infrared LEDs. So we use infrared to transmit back to that box there. So we use actually non-visible light for communication from a mobile device to the ceiling, yes.
I've got a much less technical question. When do you think we'll have a phone like that will work like that?
I think you will hopefully get it if our companies continue to be successful in about 2016, 17. I think it would be a dongle solution, but it is. We've taken that box to half of its size, and we continue to increase the size of the box and miniaturize it, for which we need a lot of money because we need to develop these electronic circuits into a microchip. Mm-hmm. And developing a microchip is very expensive, but we have all the sort of the building block technologies. The only thing is now we are currently raising the money to develop a microchip and then create a dongle, and from the dongle we create then enough interest by companies to integrate it into mobile phones. And we believe it can be done by 16 and 17.
That's very soon.
The earlier we get money, the quicker. That's
Other questions? Is that lady at the back there, or are you just... No, she's hiding. Here, lady at the front.
Thank you. I was wondering what physical materials you use to make the LEDs and how much of them we have in the world. As in, if you're envisaging making millions and billions of these LEDs, what are they made of and how much is there in the world?
The three gentlemen who got the Nobel Prize, Nakamura, they use gallium nitride. These are the blue LEDs are based on gallium nitride and different materials that can be used as semiconductors. So it's a well-known area out with my area of expertise, but the semiconductor materials. And now if you imagine that we have about 20 billion light fixtures around the world, we have I don't know how many million cars that have LED headlights. We have billions of appliances. So we talk about really, really big numbers where you have these devices integrated. It's really extremely widespread. So we're talking about, therefore, vast opportunities in turning these devices into things that make more sense than just saying, is this on or off? You send videos from that.
But sorry, I was saying, will the gallium nitrate run out?
No. I think this is only a little tiny fraction of that material that's inside there, and there's enough around the world. Even when you talk about raw earth, that is not be a likely case, as far as I understand. Yes.
Thank you. The gentleman next to... I'll try and get you next time.
Sorry, I got the microphone.
Sorry.
What kind of distance you can get between transmitter and receiver, and particularly for this bidirectional and the strong source of the light and probably the rather lighter source of the light?
Yes, I think this is a very good question. And when I go back to radio, in radio, if an antenna transmits in all directions, a single antenna. But this device already has a certain directivity. It transmits in that direction. It wouldn't transmit in that direction. So it already sort of points in a certain direction. If you want to enhance the directivity, you put a lens in front of it. So we can form the light beam in the way we want it. And what we have done in the lab, for example, with a micro LED of a output power of 4 milliwatt, which is extremely low, we've transmitted over 10 meter and have transmitted 1.1 gigabit per second. So it's a question of how you would design your optical system with your lenses than to trade off distance with coverage, so how big the spot is that you want to cover. For example, a car headlight, the BMW, which are laser-based, the BMW cars have now laser-based front lights with RGB, and they sort of project forward, provide light up to 600 meters. And you see the light after 600 meters. That means a receiver would basically be able easily to decode it. So with a car headlight nowadays, you can have 600 meters and you can go out to kilometers. If you go to laser type beams, you talk about kilometers. So it really depends on how you would shape your system.
And last question down here, the chap in the blue jacket.
Who owns a visible part of the spectrum?
I'm sorry, I should have said that. Everybody. I told you that the 3G auction provided sort of huge money, rainfall, income for the governments in Europe, in the UK, in Germany, and elsewhere, billions of euros and pounds. But the visible light spectrum is free. We can enjoy it. I have put it up here. I haven't asked anyone if I can put up a visible light transmitter here. Ofcom is not interested, not yet. And please be quiet. Yes, no, it's free. It's a free resource. It's a free resource that we can use and we utilize.
I think that's a very good note to end on. I know that you will be around the next half an hour.
Yes, and please
outside.
Visit us outside with the torches.
So there's going to be lots to play with outside, but you can also catch Professor Harald Haas and ask him any other questions you wanted to ask him. But I think this has been a really fascinating lecture. I think you've shown us this whole new potential of light, and you've shown us how it can help, whether you're under the sea, whether you're in a meeting room and you want to have a secure engagement, whether you want to have a mobile phone that's actually going to work probably in 5 years' time, given what you've described about the pressures on the current technology. So that's been absolutely fascinating. Would you join me in thanking Professor Harald Haas?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.